So recording, lights, camera, coffee, action. Jumping into a project that you haven't touched in a couple of weeks or months can sometimes feel like playing an RPG that you haven't played in months or years. Who the hell are these people? Where the hell am I going? And what even is the story? I recently had to deal with that when I jumped back into a project called Suenyo Sessions. We're going to talk about it. One of the most difficult things about, especially when it comes to editing video, is that, there's a constant upgrading of systems, the iOS or the operating system that you're working on. And, there's big conspiracies about, whether or not these updates purposefully slow your machines down. I don't have a comment on that. I don't know enough about it, but I do know that my computer used to be able to handle 4K footage, and now my computer's like, no. Even at 1/8 quality, it's still just on its last legs. And I'm not talking about the laptop. I'm talking about, I have an iMac. I'm pointing over there. You don't know what that means. Over there's my studio. Well, this is the studio. Over there's where I have my computer. But anyways, my iMac is older. It's a 2017, 5K Retina, and it has 16 gigs of RAM. And my laptop also has 16 gigs of RAM, but it also has an M1 processor. And those processors, I don't know, from what I understand, somehow handle 4K footage. Even though it's the same gigabyte, it handles 4K footage a little better. So I've been told. And I have seen and felt that my laptop can sometimes handle footage better than my iMac. But, my iMac is 27 inches. When you're dealing with a big project, you want to have that real estate to be able to push things around. And so when I started editing the footage, again, all of a sudden, my computer was just like, hell no, we ain't doing this. No. I'm in my office right now where I have my iMac 27 inch. Let me see if I can prop you up on this without falling. Wait. Yes, you can. Can I do it? Okay. Oh boy. Yeah. Bedhead and all, whatever. I'm here editing, okay? It's kind of wild because 16 gigabytes of RAM used to be like, oh my gosh. Now, what was happening when I was doing this was every time I pressed the play button, this next piece is a short piece. Of course, now it's not going to do it. But every time I pressed the play button when I was doing Suenyo Sessions, I could turn off lumetri color. I can turn off all of the effects. I tried to optimize my machine as much as possible. But what ended up happening when I was pressing play, I would have to wait 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 seconds for the playback just to start. And, if you know anything about editing, you start and stop like hundreds of times a day. So that could be minutes, maybe hours of wasted time. When you try to scrub through footage, if you're scrubbing and it's taking 2, 3, 4 seconds for the video to pop back up, again, that's so much wasted time. I quickly realized that, like, damn, I can't do this. There's 3 big projects. I can't just edit and press play, wait for 3 seconds, watch 5 seconds of footage if I'm lucky, and then have to stop it again. The workflow is just insane. And workflow is one of the most important things to you as a creative, and to me as a creative, to creative people. Workflow is like, you live and die off of that. Basically, I did some research, found out that I can upgrade, thank God, and now I have 48 gigabytes of RAM. And thankfully, I'm able to watch the footage at half quality, at full quality. I can even put lumetri color on, and at some points it'll still just run totally fine and totally smooth. But the hardest part of that necessarily wasn't even the tech. All I did was just do some research, went on Amazon, bought the RAM, and plugged it in, That's it. End of story. It was mentally getting myself back into the project. The reason why I connected diving into an old project like an old RPG is because of, I remember this specifically. There's this one game that released on one of the Nintendo systems a long time ago called Xenoblade Chronicles X. It was actually really good. I really enjoyed the game, but what ended up happening is life ended up happening. And I played maybe 20 hours, 15 hours, I don't remember. I played a substantial amount of time, and then I had to sort of just put it away for a while I dealt with all kinds of whatevers. Here's the difference between something like Xenoblade and Suenyo Sessions, okay? Xenoblade, in a lot of RPGs or games or whatever, there's not always sort of like a recap system. Maybe there is, and maybe I didn't see it, who knows, but from what I remember, that doesn't exist. What you can do is you can leave yourself breadcrumbs, because you never know when you're gonna need to take a break from a project. The reason why I didn't finish Suenyo Sessions right off the bat is because right when I was done filming with Suenyo Sessions, I went to Europe to start filming Editorial Pulpo. So I needed to put that on the back burner while I was working on that project. What you have to do and what your workflow functions as is breadcrumbs. I strive to create my workflow, my filing system, all of those things to imagine as if the dumbest person on the planet is trying to find something that you created or that I created. Now that might sound harsh, but think about it like this. You will be the dumbest person on the planet if you have some sort of gold that you filmed or that you created and you don't know where the hell it is on your hard drive. Case in point, there's a project that I filmed with an artist in Puerto Rico named Pia Love, okay? She made this amazing costume sort of mask that was inspired by Yemaya, who is the Yoruba queen of the sea. And she lived in this barrio in Puerto Rico called La Perla. And she had access to the roof. So we went up to the roof. She lived right in front of the ocean. So I was filming this thing and seeing these buildings and watching her dance with this costume. And I don't know where the hell that file is. I mean, every once in a while I'll run into it again, but most of the times I'm looking for something else. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I found this file, let me save it the right way. Usually it's like, oh, there's that thing again. But when I think about it, whatever time, and I'm like, oh, I want to watch that again. That was such a cool project. You know, I don't know where the hell it is. You know, I got like 6, 7, 10 hard drives or something like that. It's in one of them, who knows? So in this situation, I am the dumbest person on the planet. So you have to think of your workflow and think of your filing system as if you're saving it and filing it for the dumbest person on the planet. That's it. That is what your workflow is for. And the reason being is because you don't want to be the dumbest person on the planet. The reason why I wanted to do Suenyo Sessions first is because Suenyo Sessions is kind of the smallest project that I have. And it's also the one that I made the most leeway on. From the last episode, Suenyo Sessions is a play on the word I dream, yo sueño, I sueño, but it's spelled S-U-E-N-Y-O, yo sueño. It's a concert series, sort of in the line of like Tiny Desk Concert or Colors. It's just something to give performers a platform in a way to create content. I had synced the audio with the concerts. I had synced the audio with the interviews, and I had created the portions of each interview. But within that, you know, you have your filing system, like how is everything saved? It's a huge file, it's almost a terabyte large. So there's a ton of footage there that you gotta kind of figure out how you wanna organize. Really, the editing of Suenyo Sessions took me about 1.5 days, 2 days maybe. But getting myself back into the mindset of saying, okay, what was I doing then? That took a whole day and a half. So that's all time of just me figuring out what my workflow was. But workflow is everything. It has to grow, as you evolve as an artist. And you know, you're gonna go from naming things Angel Beat 1.2 to like, you know, the date the project's film, so that you can just find it chronologically if you need, if you know, oh my gosh, what did I film in June? What was this? You can just go and find it. What is the name of the project? Where was the project filmed? Who was involved in the project? Now, your filing system, your naming of your files can be, they can end up being very, very, very large, but sometimes that ends up saving you time. Because if I'm working with an artist, for instance, in Suenyo Sessions, there's an artist named Paulito Muse. Paulito Muse and I have worked together on multiple projects. I don't always put the names of the people involved, but I know that sometimes I do. And so if I go and I type Paulito Muse in the search bar, his name will pop up and anything that he's involved in will pop up. So those are kind of the reasons of why you want to create your workflow the way you think is the most valuable to you. The 48 gigabytes of RAM was just half of the story, okay? The other half of the story was learning how to cut these huge projects, Suenyo Sessions specifically, into smaller chunks, because you might have 48 gigs of RAM on your computer, but is your external hard drive fast enough to handle referencing all of these files that are sometimes hundreds of gigabytes large all at the same time? Learning how to chunk my projects and then sort of combine them later on is also a big deal, because where Suenyo Sessions is 600 to 700 gigabytes. The next project that I'm doing, which is the Lancaster Living Poetry Museum, that is closer to a terabyte. And then Editorial Pulpo is 1.4 terabytes. The technology comes in parts. And when you're working on things that are very technologically demanding, each part has to be strong. And right now, my weak points are my external hard drives, but external hard drives that are fast can be very expensive. Oddly enough, I had a 2 terabyte external SSD, and those are supposed to be lightning fast, and it was, but it crashed on me. So I'm just kind of out of luck right now until I can save up to get an SSD, because, it's not astronomically expensive. It's not like getting a new camera, but, I don't necessarily have $300 to $400 just kind of sitting around where I can spend. That is what the YouTube channel's for. That's what these projects are for. I am building up to being able to handle whatever comes my way as a businessman. But that's okay. There's something to be said about finding workarounds with your finances. It's how hip hop started. It's how, Rumba Guaguancó in Cuba started. A lot of art is started by working around what you don't have. In the shipyards in Cuba, when these Africans did not have, access to these trumpets and these, pianos and all of these things, but they were musically inclined. Music is a rhythm of the soul. So they still had that desire to create. And so what did they do? They took barrels, they took boxes, they took whatever they could find and just started, and they made something that is one of the most incredible genres of music that I love. And hip hop, we can thank the blackouts of the 60s and 70s for basically the creation of hip hop. Because what ended up happening is these blackouts happened in New York City. And because of that, all of these people started going out and looting these stereo shops and these, getting speakers and DJ equipment. And before you knew it, every crew had a dope stereo system that normally would have cost thousands of dollars. Now, me in my older age understands that theft is not really cool. But when you look at history, history is complicated. And people do what they do, and I don't judge it. I just look at it as a fact. I don't love theft now in my 40s, but it just kind of is what it is, and something beautiful came out of it. So for you that are thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even have a 4K camera. Well, start looking into the artists that created some of the most influential and powerful genres and songs. And I don't have many examples of people outside of music, just from my experience as a musician, but look into those types of people, because ingenuity is the mother of invention. So for you that has the camera that only films in 1080p, but has a badass lens, make something. You know, who's to say that everything has to be in 4K? People are gonna watch interesting stories. So in closing, I wanna ask you guys, have you ever had that situation where you were looking for a file, didn't know where it was, couldn't find it for the life of you, and it changed your idea and your concept of what it really means to file your work? Have you ever been in a situation where you started a project and had to press pause on that project for days, weeks, months, years maybe, and come back to the project and say, where the hell was I? What even is this? I want to know about it. Tell me about it in the comments. Talk to me about how you've overcome that. Talk to me about how it hindered you and then you've overcome it, or how it still hinders you. I'd like to know. Is there a big project that you're working on that is just too much for your computer to handle, that you had to break down into chunks? I want to know all of these things. I'm still in the learning process. I don't want to put myself out there as this YouTube channel expert that people are going to and saying, how do I do this? Ángel Rafael. Oh yeah, he's got the perfect tutorial. That ain't me. I could always learn more. If you guys have any insights on what to do, I'd love to hear it. Hit the like, comment, subscribe, hit the little bell icon, do all of the things. I'd love to see more of you. This is just the beginning.